if you could. If I randomly chose a few of you and called you over, would it happen? So what we'll do is we'll talk about that next. All right, let's get back to this tennis match. This back and forth British action, colonial reaction, and I believe in one of the classes yesterday, you might have been in that one, I said that this is what the British did then, right? They took the gloves off. Their act of kindness was met with colonial aggressiveness. So fine, if the nice way to treat you doesn't work, then we're going to treat you not so nice. And so let's introduce something called the Townsend Acts. What's that?
Water.
Glass. And what's that?
Color.
Paint.
Watercolor.
And what's that? Paper. And kryptonite. Lead. And tea. You are looking at the 5 major imports. The colonists imported this stuff. Glass, paint, paper, lead, and tea. All taxed. Yes, dear.
What are they importing lead for?
Pencils. No, I don't know. What do you use lead for?
Oh, bullets, but
Bullets. I don't know. Metal things.
they didn't really know
Armor. All taxed. Okay? If the colonists engage in a boycott, well, then you're going to go without these important products. There are 5 major imports. Does anyone see what's coming? You see what's coming here. There's a tax on tea. Okay. Here's the colonial response, which for some reason was on there before. To make sure, this is important, to make sure that the colonists didn't get away with smuggling, because just smuggle the stuff in. To make sure that the colonists did not get away with that, the British also created this thing called a writ of assistance. A writ of assistance. Does anyone know what a search warrant is? Have any of you been the unfortunate recipient of a search warrant?
it basically says like we can search you and you can't stop us.
That's right. But what do you happen to know? I'm not sure if this was a civics topic or not. Do you happen to know what must be on the search warrant? What has to be on the reason and what they're looking for? What they're looking for has to be on the search warrant. So if they ring your doorbell and say, we're looking for stolen cell phones, and they search your house, they don't find stolen cell phones, but they do happen to see, I don't know, kidnapped children, there's nothing that's not true. In an emergency, if they see, they don't look at Bill who's tied up saying, sorry, Bill, you're not on the search warrant. Good luck. That's not true. But if they're looking for stolen cell phones and instead they find something else of equal danger, they can't do anything for the moment. Now they can quickly run to their car and get another search warrant. That's when the toilet starts flushing, if you know what I'm saying. Bad advice. She got it. God, you're my favorite again. This is a search warrant, only it did not need to list anything. It was a permission slip to search any boat at any time for any reason for anything. And what are they looking for? Smuggled goods. Right? So you could be an American boat, perfectly legit, and here comes the British Navy to stop and search your boat, and you could say, like, I didn't do anything. There's no reason why you're stopping me, right? Can the cops just randomly pull you over? No. They're not supposed to be able to. They need some sort of reason, okay? They need to say, your taillight's out, or you're swerving. They can't just randomly, red car. I don't like red. They can't do that. But this writ of assistance gave the British permission to do just that. In fact, the reason why police here need a search warrant is because the British didn't. So many of the things that we do are in response to what the British did when we were colonies. Do you know why we drive on the right? I mean, honestly, true story. Because the British drive on the left. The British drive on the left. Wait till you go to Britain and try and drive a rental car. That's a disaster. Personal experience here, right? And the decision was made, well, we're going to drive on the right. Eat it, Britain.
So does like the rest of the world.
This is seen as abusive British behavior. You're abusing Americans who aren't necessarily doing anything. You're creating more enemies. And here's how the Americans responded. The intellectuals wrote very important letters. And who are they writing the letters to? Parliament. Members of Parliament who might be sympathetic to them. And there were members of Parliament who said, why are we treating the Americans this way? Some even wrote it straight to the king, who, by the way, does anyone know? Who was the British king at this time? What was his name? George. You're right, George III, who may have been insane. I mean that. Like they now think that he was suffering from a mental illness because some of his decisions were wacko. Okay? Sons of Liberty did their thing, terrorism. And then a recommitment by all 13 colonies to don't buy glass, paint, paper, lead, and tea. Don't buy it. Okay. So it seems that we're elevating, we're taking another step toward that line being open conflict. We're taking another step toward that line. Any questions here? And some of you said you can see where this is going. That's tea. It would be fun if we had like a party or something.
Tea party.
A tea party, yeah. Okay. So let's take a look at this. Do any of you happen to know what you're looking at?
The British fire
Massacre.
The Boston Massacre. That's right. I would call this, and I think you understand, I would call this the Schweikert and Allen version of the Boston Massacre. Okay. Oh, there's a dog.
Yeah, there it is.
There's a little puppy. Okay. So I would like you to mentally, you don't need to write this out, but I want you to write the story. It's a one sentence history book. The Boston Massacre. What happened? Right? Tell me the story. Someone go ahead. Go ahead.
Me?
Yep. What happened?
Oh, well, from this drawing, what happened?
Uh-huh.
The British people are shooting.
Oh, the British people are firing at the colonists. Let me ask you a series of questions to kind of clarify. What caused the British to fire at the Americans?
They threw rocks at them.
Is that in there?
No.
What are you doing? What are you doing? Stop bringing other knowledge in and base it on this.
I don't know.
What caused anything?
They didn't fight me.
We don't know.
They didn't do anything. This guy's getting shot in the back. Look at all these people just minding their own business. Next question. Was it a random shooting or was it organized? How do you know that?
They're all standing in the street.
Uh-huh.
They've got a guy behind them telling them.
Uh-huh. Look at them. They're all aiming in the same direction. There's a ton of smoke. What does that tell you?
They all shot at once.
They all shot at the same time. And who's this feller?
He's the
Commanding officer. What is he doing?
commanding.
He's telling them to fire. He's leaning forward. He's got his sword out. They're all facing one way, as in, this is something we've been told to do. And don't forget the puppy. Based on this, would you say that the British were in the wrong?
Mm-hmm.
Based on this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Take it back. Unsay what you said. This was a painting made by a guy by the name of Sam Adams. Sam Adams was in the Sons of Liberty. Sam Adams. Beer guy, that's right. Okay. This painting was distributed throughout the colonies as in this is what happened. Does anyone know what that's called when a newspaper tries to get you to see things from a certain point of view? Propaganda. Which, by the way, if you have not made the connection yet, I have failed. Zinn is propaganda. Schweikert and Allen is propaganda. History books are propaganda. Your job is to figure out which is the more credible version. What we are doing right now, is a miniature 6-paragraph Blue Book essay, only the topic is the Boston Massacre. Here's one version. I'm not saying it's the right or wrong version. I'm just saying this is one version of what happened. Colonists minding their own business, puppy, organized attack, firing at the same time on the command of the British commanding officer in Boston. Version number 2. See if you can contrast version 1 and version 2. Again, I'll just tell you, colonists minding their own business. What about over here?
You got weapons.
Organized attack, firing at the same time. Maybe that's true, but wait, what's going on in the background? Who are these people facing the other way? I don't see anybody facing the other way. I see all the colonists over here. These British soldiers are facing that way, and then on their back are British soldiers facing that way. So think about it. Your British soldiers, you formed a circle in the middle of colonists who are minding their own business.
Like one
What's
guy.
this guy doing? He's grabbing. Is he grabbing that thing like the Indians were grabbing Columbus's sword? Like, hey, what's this? Ow! Okay, someone want to tell me this story?
The colonists.
Not her. She's not responsible. Someone else? Is that your volunteer? Don't be afraid to be wrong here. Go ahead.
Looks like this is kind of everybody's tagging everybody.
A little bit more chaotic,
Like
Okay.
colonists.
including the colonists.
Yeah, like they were fighting too.
How do you know that? Where's your evidence? Where's your document evidence?
That guy's got like a thing in his hand. He's like, looks like he's about to hit him.
This guy right here. He's got looks like a turkey leg.
Yeah. That guy's getting, like,
It's a club.
stabbed by the British guy in the face.
This guy, notice black. You are looking at what is considered the first American casualty of the American Revolution.
Yeah.
His name is Crispus Attucks. He is honored in Boston. Have you been to Boston? Great city. Go there. What's so cool about Boston is you're downtown Boston. There are 3 painted lines all over the streets of Boston. Just a red, a white, and a blue. And you can take a walking tour. Let's take the red tour. And you just walk along the line. And there you are at Bunker Hill. And there you are where the Boston Massacre occurred. And there you are at the Boston Tea Party. And it's really, really cool. It's all free. Right? So anyway, Crispus Attucks. Did I mention his name? Crispus Attucks. His name is Crispus Attucks. Did I mention his name? First casualty of the American Revolution. His name is Crispus Attucks.
How do you spell that?
T-H-A-T. Anything else that we can conclude?
No.
I mean, think about the fact that the British are in a circle in the middle of a crowd. What's going on? What are the British doing? They're defending themselves. The British are defending themselves. This is the British are attacking without provocation. This is the British are responding to an attack. Now, do we have any historical evidence to support one version over the other? What do we know? You started it, actually. Does anyone know how the Boston Massacre supposedly started? Historical evidence? Go ahead.
Wasn't it like the colonists like throwing rocks at the British?
Remember, ton of British soldiers in Boston. That's where they are. Well, if you're a colonist, you don't like this. And so a few colonists walked by, started calling them lobsterbacks. That was an insult, right? A bunch of lobsterbacks, right? Pretty soon they started throwing snowballs at them. This is in March in Boston. Pretty soon it becomes ice balls. Pretty soon it becomes rocks. pretty soon there's chanting going on. Imagine you're an American soldier and you're in the middle of Afghanistan. You're in Kabul, Afghanistan, and you've got Mr. M16 here, and an Afghani crowd starts to chanting anti-American, and they're burning American flags, and they're chanting at you, and pretty soon they're throwing things at you, and you have Mr. M16, and they're starting to approach you. What would you do?
Protect yourself.
And you don't have to be so glib about it, but I'm pointing out that in the opinion of the people in red here, they were defending themselves. Okay. Now the interesting thing is, we can verify that one of these is more accurate than the other. We can verify based on historical evidence. There was a trial. There was a trial. The soldiers were put on trial in Boston. They were put on trial in Boston and accused of murder and firing without justification. And of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, of the 6, now I have to make sure I'm right here, but I believe 2 were convicted, and their convictions were fairly minor. Their lawyer was a guy by the name of John Adams. John Adams. He would be our second president. He was their lawyer. Right? He represented them. Here, by the way, was an FU to the British. You accuse Americans and you send them off to those admiralty courts with no jury. What do we do with British soldiers? We put them before a jury of Americans and we find them, for the most part, not guilty. We're more fair than you are, Britain. Right? So some people thought the fact that the Americans found these people not guilty was bad for America, but others said, no. This is a win for us. We can say to Britain, we're more fair than you. Look what we do with our people that we accuse of crimes. We put them on trial fairly. Okay? You just did a mini 6-paragraph Blue Book essay, the same thing you're going to do with Zinn, Schweiker, and Allen over 2 issues. The only thing I didn't do is synthesize. Or did I? I don't think I synthesized. Okay.
Yeah, you did. It's Afghanistan.
I did it! Woo! Hey, all right. Let's keep going. Once again, what we have, just look here, is the British stepping back. The Americans put those British soldiers on trial, for the most part, found them not guilty. And so the British said, you know what? Let's just chill. Let's just chill. We will remove all of those taxes. We'll keep the one on tea just to remind you that we have the right to tax you. We'll just keep that one little token tax. But other than that, no more taxes. No taxes on anything except tea and crumpets. So that's where this bullet comes from. Tea Act kept to remind the colonists that the British had the right to tax. The British Parliament passed this thing called the Declaratory Act. The Declaratory Act said that the British had the right to tax the colonists. We're in charge. We removed those other taxes willfully. You didn't force us to do anything. We removed them, but we didn't have to. And look what the Americans did in response. A group of the Sons of Liberty snuck on board a British ship filled with tea in Boston Harbor, dumped it into the harbor, dumped all that tea into the harbor. Tea back then is very, very valuable. Don't dismiss this. This is, imagine members of Al-Qaeda sneaking into an American military base and ruining a bunch of tanks. We would say like terrorism. How many of you before now have ever thought of the Boston Tea Party as an act of terrorism? Of course you haven't. And I'm not saying you should or shouldn't, but the British did. although terrorism didn't really exist as a word back then. But the British were like, my God, look what you've done. And we Americans say, yeah, British Boston Tea Party, sweet. It's once again, it's this idea of perspective. Zinn's a perspective. Schweikert and Allen's a perspective. The colonial perspective, the British perspective. It's all perspective, right? By the way, I just told you it was the Sons of Liberty. Why are a bunch of Indians dumping the tea? That's how they dress themselves. Two theories exist about why they did it. Anyone want to take a shot? Why'd they dress themselves as Indians? Yeah, maybe they were setting the Indians up. Look, it wasn't us. The Indians did it. Or, yeah. Well, yeah, okay, fine. Yes. Any other theory? But why? You're right. There's nothing wrong with that. Yep.
Maybe they like get the Indians to help them. They're like,
There's something there. Like, we are the new Indians. We're the colonists. We're the new Indians. You know how the British treat the Native Americans? Now you're treating us that way. We're identifying with them. They're our brothers. That was a temporary arrangement. But anyway, they did this, okay? In response to the Boston Tea Party, the British passed a series of laws called the Coercive Acts. The Coercive Acts. What does it mean to coerce? If I coerced him out of his desk, what would you have just witnessed? And then that would probably be my last day as a teacher here. But what happened? I coerced him out of the desk. I forced him. I mean, true story. I'm gonna pause this for a moment. There we go. First year teaching at the middle school. So I'm teaching this 8th grade class and I'm being loud and obnoxious and trying to be a cool teacher, whatever. And so this one student kind of laughed and I jokingly grabbed him, tipped his desk over, and he was fine with it. You know, great kid, right? I grabbed his feet, grabbed his ankles, pulled him out of the room, right? All in front of the students. The students are having a great time. And I'm hearing this in the hallway. I'm hearing this discussion going on to my right, to my left. And I thought, oh no, what's going on? And I look, and it's the principal giving a group of parents of St. Anne's kids a tour of the school. So I was like, oh, Jimmy, can I help you up? Amazingly, I wasn't fired. All right, we're gonna pick up right where we left off. Okay. So what were the intolerable acts? The coercive acts and the intolerable acts, same thing, interchangeable. Coercive acts, intolerable acts, interchangeable. Okay. There were 5. There were 5 laws passed. The British have had it with the Americans. That's it. No more Mr. Nice Guy. Law number 1, where the Boston Tea Party happened, we're shutting the harbor down, shutting it down. No more imports, no more exports. That's it. We're shutting her down. Okay. The British Navy off the coast of Boston Harbor. Okay. You might think that's a drawing, but back then, that's what everyone looked like. That is King George III. There he is. Okay. So Boston Harbor shut down. Law number 2. No more local government. No more local government. We're shutting her down. You want to meet? You can meet once a year. And that one meeting can last no more than 1 day. No more local government. Law number 3. From now on, any British soldier accused of anything will be brought back to Britain and we'll put him on trial. You might argue, but wait a minute. Didn't they find the British soldiers not guilty? Yeah, but from now on, the likelihood of that happening has decreased. We'll put them on trial. So synthesis here. Imagine some American nutcase in Afghanistan shoots and kills a bunch of Afghani civilians who didn't do anything. And what happened? You know, he's accused of murder. And the U.S. saying, we got it. We'll put him on trial. We'll bring him back here. Now, is he going to get a fair trial here?
No.
Well, maybe. I mean, maybe he will. Right? I think one thing that we as a country can say to the rest of the world is we do hold our own soldiers accountable. Wait till we get to Vietnam. Right? Maybe you ever heard of William Calley? Those of you who took World of Conflict. Okay. So we do hold our own soldiers accountable. Every time? No, but
We
more
try
than any other government, right? Law number 4, the Second Quartering Act. Remember the first one was when the colonists paid for British housing. Now what?
They live in their house.
The colonists have to host the British soldier. They have to feed them. They're at the dinner table. They have to give them a room. Now talk about revolution at the dinner table. Right? Not going to happen. By the way, do you see that that's what this is designed to shut down? No more talk about revolution because you can't meet. No more talk about revolution because a soldier is sitting at your dinner table. We're gonna shut down all this talk. Okay? And then finally, something called the Quebec Act. The Quebec Act created this thing that you and I today call Canada.
Woo.
Canada. Some people call it Canada.
Canada.
The Quebec Act allowed the French-speaking people in Canada to continue to speak French, to continue being Catholic, to have trials by jury. Any of you have siblings? Brothers, sisters? Okay, imagine this. Your dad comes home, and he's got a shiny new set of keys. And he says, oh, check it out. Brand new car. Here you go. And gives it to your sibling. Brand new car. And says, how was your day? And then walks and sits down and watches the football game. Right? Now, did he take anything away from you? Uh-uh. So what are you mad about? Why are you mad?
Because it's unfair.
He gave your sibling a brand new car. You get it? Do you understand? The British just gave Canadians more rights than the colonists. I take you away, I take you away, I take you away, I take you away. Here's your new car. This one made the colonists angrier than all these. You gave them? They're French. They speak funny. That was Italian. Okay, so this is the gloves are off. No more Mr. Nice Guy. I mean, in essence, the 13 colonies are now a police state. Right? They're a police state. You understand what I mean? Right? The British are in charge now. At least that's what they think. Okay. Very good. Any questions? That's it for note taking. You can put those away. Let's visit. Zeeks. We are visiting your first quarter paper.
I know.
As I've said, you should be ready to sit down with me and talk about questions 1 through 6 under step number 2. Today's the 26th. Part 2 is due. I should be able to sit down right now, Rosie here, and say, all right. And you and I would talk about questions 1 through 6. Probably shocking to none of you, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. Part 1 is not graded. Step 2 is not graded. Step 3 is not graded. Step 4 is not graded. Step 5 is graded. That's the one that counts. So for some of you, and you'll notice that the due date of step 5 is October the 24th. And so I think what's going on in some of your minds, I hope not, but I think what's going on is, oh, well, I'll start worrying about this October 23rd. That is a bad idea. Bad idea. You're big boys and girls. This is a college level course. I'm telling you where you should be by about now. And where you should be is the ability to answer questions 1 through 6, which takes us to the next step. The next step is due October the 18th. Today is September 26th. This is not due until October the 18th. The reason I'm giving you this much time, well, there are a couple reasons. First of all, soon Mr. Lindenberg will be back. Okay? I chatted with him last night. I filled him in on things, and he's motivated to get back. We'll put it that way. Okay? So let's just take a look at what step 3 says. So I'll just read through it. So it says, this is eventually going to be a 5-paragraph paper. The theory you develop must have 3 main arguments. The 3 arguments are paragraphs 2, 3, and 4. Then you have an intro, and then you have a conclusion. 5-paragraph paper. Okay? Well, what are the 3 arguments? Well, you get to pick. You see the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and then on the back 5? Pick 3. Pick 3. Let's just say you pick numbers 1, 2, and 3. Your second paragraph will then be making the argument that either the British or the Americans fired first, and the reason you find it so is because of an argument about bias. You are going to argue that the group you believe was less biased than the group you don't believe. And you're going to find evidence, document evidence. Remember, there's no historical evidence used in this paper. You don't get to go to an outside source and say, yep, see, no. The only material you get to use is that packet, those witness claims. That's all you get to use, okay? Your second paragraph, if you go with 1, 2, and 3, your second paragraph will be focused on bias. Find an example of a British witness and comment on his bias. Find an example of an American witness and comment on his bias and make the argument that the side you agree with is less biased than the side you disagree with. Now, you're doing that in 1 paragraph. That might be 2 paragraphs. You could split that into bias based on the British versus bias based on the Americans. You understand? Right? This could end up being an 8-paragraph paper. No more work. It's just you're sort of organizing it a little bit more. And that's fine. Okay? Same thing. Number 2. Let's just say you go with number 2. The idea of time. Some of the witnesses reveal their version quite quickly. Others decades later. Well, which is the more believable? And you can make an argument either way. You could say, well, fresh in your mind. Or you could say, well, pretty quickly, still in the heat of the moment, still emotionally attached, still unable to look at it without an emotional attachment to the result. Whereas the person who talked about it much later has nothing to lose, nothing to gain, is saying this is what happened. But it doesn't matter. Just go with one or the other. Okay? British versus American. Number 3, multiple accounts. There are some people that agree with the versions of other people. Multiple people say, this is what happened, versus the lone account. Does that matter to you? Okay. Maybe number 4. Does it matter that some people give their what happened under oath versus I think one witness was basically, I don't know if tortured is quite the right idea, but he was definitely in the company of the other group when he gave his testimony. Well, does that matter to you? Does that seem like a compelling one? Flip it over. The 5th one is an option, basically the credibility of the witnesses themselves. Does it matter that some of them were officers versus some others that were just happened to be there? I think one of them's a farmer, wasn't one of them like the farmer where it happened or something? I can't remember. Okay, does that matter to you? Okay, pick 3. Pick 3, and you're creating an outline. It could be pencil and paper for all I care. Okay, you're simply outlining it. You're creating your 3 choices for what is making you sway one way or the other. And by the way, make it a clean sweep. It's 3-0. It's 3-0 British or 3-0 Americans. Don't say, well, the Americans are right here, but the British are right here. What's wrong with you? No, 3-0. 3-0. Okay. And which witnesses you're going to use for each one of your 3 choices. And then just kind of a sentence. Here's what the reason why I chose this guy. Here's the reason why I chose this guy. Okay. You've got not quite a month to do this. I happen to believe, by the way, that if you're keeping up on this, you could have part 3 done today. and then you're done. And then if you're the kind of person that likes to work ahead, you can kind of look ahead to, well, what's step 4? Okay, any questions on this? Okay, let's put that away. I want to, for the moment, I don't think we quite finished these 2 things. I don't think we quite finished. Anyone else? Did not get these 2 things? Okay. Just her? Oh, why don't you come up here if you didn't get them? Just one of each.
Yeah.
Oh, some over you. How was that leave?
I'm just admiring the art on the
Where
new
were you?
quartering deck. It's high quality. The art on the new quartering
If you weren't here, I invite you to look at the video that was posted on the website. We went over these. The one that says synthesis example is a very good paragraph. It shows how effectively synthesis can be, which remember you have to do 1 time in your Blue Book essay. This happens to be a paragraph talking about why the Russians invaded Ukraine, which if you're following the current events at all, Ukraine is in the news lately for reasons that have to do with our president and was something done illegally between the United States and Ukraine and all this stuff, and it's kind of a mess. But it all kind of ties back to this. Russians invaded Ukraine. And what the writer of this paragraph did was say, you want to know why the Russians invaded Ukraine? Fine, I'll explain to you why the Nazis invaded Austria. And you're thinking, what does the Nazis invading Austria have to do with the Russians invading Ukraine? Everything. It was the same reason. That's synthesis. Okay, so that's what this was about. This is the one we didn't quite finish, right? Am I right? We didn't quite finish this. We kind of ran out of time. Okay. So again, those of you who weren't here yesterday, I invite you to kind of watch the video, because in that video, I talked about that first chunk there. What is context? What is context? Context is the big idea. What is it all about? And I invite you to consider that you are free to, for this first Blue Book essay, to use one of the ideas I have. You're free to mooch. Come on, do it. Or come up with a big idea on your own. And I'm going to suggest 2 possible context big ideas. One is the idea that throughout history, groups of people have invaded other groups of people, conquered other groups of people, right? And that's a big idea that's happened throughout history. And then you talk about a few quick examples and then tie it into what has to do with Columbus and the Spanish culture. Okay. Another possible big idea is the idea of propaganda. We talked about it today. I showed you an example of the Boston Massacre. I've suggested to you that Zinn is propaganda, that Schweiker and Allen propaganda. History books are propaganda. Propaganda is simply my ability to get you to think the way I want you to think. That's what propaganda is. Okay? It hints at lying. Propaganda, there's an implication here that propaganda is false. That's not necessarily true. Propaganda might be accurate. Commercials are propaganda. When you watch that commercial, you think, I need to buy that product. If propaganda is effectively done, you will get in your car immediately and drive and buy that thing. Okay, nice work. Okay? That's another possible idea. You got propaganda. Okay, and Zinn and Schweiker and Allen, how are you going? Okay. I believe that's where we left off. Is that about right? Okay. Where's the thesis restatement in this paragraph?
Yeah.
It's the very last sentence. Very last sentence. Okay. I'm not saying you have to do it that way. You could do it that way, right? It appears here that this is word for word the thesis statement that was at the end of your first paragraph. I might suggest you tweak it a bit. Maybe not have it word for word the same, but there it is. Okay. So at the beginning, we have this idea called context, which is the big idea. And at the end, we have this thing called thesis restatement. Guess what's between those 2 things?
Your argument.
right? Your argument summary, your roadmap reiteration. You're reintroducing to me what you were arguing about. In the roadmap reiteration, I should be reading about things like ingredients and atmosphere, because that's what the paper was all about. In your Blue Book essay, your roadbook reiteration should be including 4 things. Do you know? What 4 things? Don't be afraid to be wrong here, but what do you think I'm talking about? Yes?
4 different paragraphs.
Yeah, okay, can you be specific? What's a possible one of these 4 things?
Compass was good, compass was bad, Spanish was good, Spanish was bad.
And don't forget to include Schweikert and Allen and Zinn. I should see Zinn in your roadmap reiteration. I should see Schweikert Allen in your roadmap reiteration. I should see issue number 1, and I should see issue number 2. That's what's in your roadmap reiteration. So your 6th paragraph is, what's the big idea? Here's what it has to do with what I'm talking about, those 4 things, and then restating your thesis. That's your 6th paragraph. Okay. Any questions? Wow, a rarity. I'm done a little early. Okay, well, you can shut off for 5 minutes or maybe think about what you want to do here. Oh, wait. There is something else. Today is Thursday. We don't have school tomorrow or Saturday or Sunday. The next time we have school is Monday. Birthday girl. I'm going to let you make a decision. I am going to assign you to come up with a rough draft. Is it 6 paragraphs? Have you written all 4 body paragraphs? Or should you have? Yes. I want you to take a shot at writing paragraph number 6. Due Tuesday. Due by Tuesday. Okay? And this is something, once again, where we'll be sitting, exchanging with each other, highlighting, that sort of thing. By Tuesday.